All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Denise Rassel, and I am here with Jill Roper, who is a certified professional. Tell us all about her services. We're going to ask her about the current atmosphere of birthing and the concerns that women are having right now that are pregnant, and in the times of what's happening at the hospital in the COVID crisis, and specifically in what's happening. So I know I've got a couple people right now on here. I'm going to try to do my best to be able to answer your questions in chat, so just bear with me. So Jill, welcome. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I've been back into the Frandor office, and there's several pregnant people at the Frandor office, and I just feel a sense of urgency to be able to communicate with. In fact, I have a lady in labor right now, just did her yesterday, and she started her labor process. And then we've got probably, I'm going to say, at least another 6 to 8 pregnant mommies coming into the clinic, and they're concerned, and I don't blame them. One of the people that I know, I started taking horseback riding lessons last year, and my trainer, who I call her my trainer, that's Sammy Joe, and Sammy Joe, Jill here is Sammy Joe's midwife, birth coach, midwife, what, I feel connected that way to Jill, and I don't think she's that far away from Lansing, and I just want to welcome her here to our practice, Rassel Daniel Holistic Health Center, and I do hail from Gilead Healing Center as well, which is a Christian holistic health center, as well as a place of prayer. So welcome, Jill Roper. I appreciate your last minute agreement to be on on this interview, and I just want you to blast us with what's happening, what do you do, and the current climate.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited. COVID has just decimated our society as we know it, particularly with mamas and babies. And I have a real heart for women who are carrying a child. I too am a Christian and believe all life is sacred. What I am hearing from multiple hospitals all across the nation and in Michigan is really scary. There is a good reason why women are afraid to go in the hospital. So I think, though, if we look at the big picture, this has shown us that hospitals are for sick people. That's what hospitals are for. Women that are healthy and their babies are healthy, there is no reason for them to walk into a hospital. There are alternatives. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about the current climate in the hospitals. So unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I don't know, every hospital decides what their protocol is, and the problem is the protocols change every day. So last week, a woman who, she was not a client of mine, she had 5 children already, all vaginally. She didn't want to go in until the last moment. Excuse me. So the protocol in her hospital was to do the rapid test for COVID on admission. Well, she was 10 centimeters. There was the baby. She tested positive. She had no symptoms whatsoever, and they forced her, literally forced her into an emergency C-section. A C-section is major abdominal surgery. The baby's head was right there, so they had to shove the baby's head back up, and then they separated mama and baby. And so the CDC and the World Health Organization do not even agree. The World Health Organization says any woman who tests positive, the baby needs to stay with her because she needs her milk, she needs skin to skin. And the CDC is saying, no, we need to separate them. And I am hearing all through Michigan. In fact, I have doctors who deliver at home with me, medical. I've had a surgeon, I've had a pediatrician. I've had many other doctors who say, I don't want my child being delivered in a hospital setting. And so it's really waking people up to the fact that there are alternatives. You don't have to go to the hospital, because here's what happens, and it's not right. And this is what I'm a champion about. You lose your voice and your choice the moment you walk into that hospital. They will either tell you you don't have a choice, or they will tell you, they will call CPS on you if you disagree. And I know originally there were some OBs who said, we are only going to C-section every woman who comes in, no matter what, because we're so afraid of COVID. And that's just crazy. And you should have a voice in your care. So let's just talk about some things that I hear routinely, whether it's COVID or not. Vaginal exams. Well, of course, you have to have multiple vaginal exams. And I did a video on this called Your Cervix is Not a Crystal Ball. So those are all unnecessary. Your cervix is not a crystal ball. I've had a woman sit at 8 centimeters for 4 days, and I've had a woman 3 centimeters for 6 weeks. It's not a crystal ball. You can go from 3 centimeters to delivery in 30 minutes. And how do I know that? Because I did that many years ago. So they tell you that you don't have a choice, that you have to do what they tell you to do. Another thing is you cannot say no for the COVID rapid test. Now, the rapid test is still in its early stages, and the accuracy rate is not good. And even if you did have COVID, if you don't have any symptoms, there is no reason to separate you and baby. There's certainly no reason to cut the baby out of you. And there's certainly no reason to make you wear a mask. There is no evidence that wearing a mask during labor is wisdom, because it's going to lower your oxygen rate, which means it's also going to lower your baby's oxygen rate. And so that is something that I never recommend. So another thing with COVID is demanding that you have a C-section. You do not have to agree with C-section. What they do, and then they do your baby going to die. And no problems. I don't know what
It's sorry. I'm going to turn this off. That'll work. Hold on 1 second.
Oh, it went away. As soon as you took the earbuds off.
Yes, I was trying to. Oh, 1 second. Go ahead, keep talking, Joe.
Okay, sure. So let's talk about your alternatives. There are 2 birth centers that are actual birth centers that are standalone. Those, there's one all the way on the west side of the state, and there's one down in Southfield. Those are the only two that are stand-alone. All other, quote, birth centers that they talk about are inside of the hospital on the same floor, and you have the same problem that you have in the hospital without a birth center. So there are those two that I just talked about. The other way is home birth. If you are a low-risk woman, you are safer at home than you are in a hospital. Now let's talk about first-time moms. You're called a primip. A primip chance of having a C-section here in Grand Blanc, for instance, at Genesis is over 40%. Over 40%. So that means 4 out of 10 women cannot birth naturally. Well, that's not true. That is all about lawsuits and protocols and insurance companies. And so once you have a C-section, it is very difficult to find a care provider who will assist you in trying to do a vaginal birth. So if you are low risk, even a first-time mom, I've heard first-time moms say, well, I just think it's safer, or my family think it's safer to go ahead and do it in the hospital the first time and then go home. And I like to say, give me a woman the first time and she'll never even consider going to a hospital because she has gotten to experience birth the way that she wants. So home birth is a safe alternative. If you have a certified professional midwife that's licensed here in Michigan, there has to be a certain amount of training. We are available to assist women, and we are champions of women. We want you to have a voice. So my motto is your birth, your baby, your way. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Let's talk about vaccines. So when people ask me, well, they're going to force me to do vaccines if I go to the hospital. So you have a choice, but if you step into a hospital, you need to understand the ramifications. I have had plenty of women talk to me and say that they put their baby in a NICU and nothing was wrong with the baby, and they're insisting that they give them all these vaccines. And I say, well, you do have it. You're supposed to have a voice. And I had a family who said that they threatened CPS. They opened a file on them and would not let them take the baby home. So with COVID right now, they are just honing in on almost all your rights are taken away.
So Jill, let me ask you something. So how does one, if a person does not want to have that experience in the hospital, especially now, and although they've been going the hospital route with the primary or with the OBGYN, and they're all set up, and they're maybe 2 months out. A lot of people, when they're pregnant, I know I've had, by the way, I've had 5 children, 3 in the hospital, and my last 2 at home. So I've not had a C-section. I had 3 in the hospital, all different experiences. Of course, every birth is different. And then 2 at home. And I did not have a midwife. I had a catcher, which would be my husband. So I have my own birth experiences, and I highly recommend a home birth. And you're right, Jill. I would have done that. I should have, would have, could have, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I would have done that my first birth if I would have been confident enough. And I think that's the confidence factor, is that, way back when everybody had I mean, there were no hospital options. And, you know, historically, women had their babies at home. We call a midwife. The men would get out, the women would be there, and we'd all labor together. That's how it worked. That's how it worked. I got to tell you this short story. I had a few years ago when we had the marathon here in Lansing, I was taking care of some of the runners from Africa. Chiropractically, I volunteered my services for them. And as I was examining them, we have a picture of a birth picture up on the wall of a doctor holding a baby upside down. That's typical. Everybody, you know, has this vision of when the baby's born, the doctor in the mask turns the baby upside down and spanks it, right? That's this picture we have of hospital births. Well, never in all the years I've been practicing has anyone ever said anything about that one picture, because it's about the first subluxation, the birth process. And this gentleman from Africa says to me, "What is that person doing to the baby?" And so all of a sudden I felt a cultural, like all of a sudden I had to explain the American culture, because they don't do this anywhere else in the world the way Americans do and Canadians do. They do not do this in the rest of in the world. So I had to explain to him, well, in America, women go to the hospital to have babies. The doctors mask up and gown up, and then when the baby's born, they hang them upside down for some reason and spank their bottom. And he's like, then his next question is, what's wrong with the women in America?
Oh my.
And in order to go to the hospital, and I'm like, wow, you know, that was a hit for all women in America. There's nothing wrong with the women in America. What's wrong is this generation, the last couple generations, have not been shown that the birth process is a natural process. What they've been brainwashed into is it's a medical procedure, and it's painful, and you need to be drugged, if not shot in your back. And absolutely 40% or more of those babies are going to be born C-section because, oh, wait a minute, you don't have a big enough pelvis to have this baby. That is the biggest joke I've ever heard. Not a big enough pelvis. God did not put anything in us that's not going to come out of us. Every woman has a big enough pelvis. I don't care. My sister is 5 foot tall or shorter. She would say 5 foot. And she decided to have her first baby at home, right next door. We were at a chiropractic school. And this baby, yes, Jackson, that's you if you ever see this video. She labored at home for 2 days in active labor for 48 hours before this baby came out. It takes time to stretch the tissues, to stretch the pelvis. The pelvis will open enough for that baby to come through. Maybe if anyone would not be big enough to have a baby, it would be my sister, Heather, Dr. Heather in Traverse City. But she labored at home, she walked, she stretched, she went into hot, some warm bath. She did the oil stretching, she slept, she ate, she drank. And then when the midwife finally came, she's like, then the baby was ready to be born. But it was 2 days, 48 hours. And some people think 6 hours is too long. Listen, your body has to stretch, it has to prepare. And it's called labor. It's called labor because it's work. It's jinx. It's work. It's work. Yes. And when you go into the hospital, I witnessed this with my daughter, Jessica, when she was going into the hospital with her first son. When we walked in there, immediately they start talking about the PAIN. So there's then a click in the brain, And all you can think about is the PAIN instead of the LABOR, okay? It gets switched in the brain to PAIN. And they want you to sign something or to start giving you something for that, even though you're a day away from having this baby. And let me tell you, if you don't have that baby, now it could be different. It's been 17, well, my last baby in the hospital was born like 24 years ago. But if you don't progress fast enough, if you're not there and have this baby within like 5 hours, they want to progress you. They want to give you Pitocin, which is terrible. Never experienced it.
Let's talk about,
okay.
Yeah, let's talk about Pitocin, because Pitocin is the synthetic of oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone that helps relax our body and help the uterus to push the baby down and out. Pitocin is a synthetic. The problem with Pitocin is it makes unnatural contractions. It actually inhibits the receptors, and so you lose the oxytocin. It doesn't flow anymore, and then you've got this Pitocin. So the contractions are unnatural. And then once you have that, then you say, oh, I can't handle the pain. Well, of course you can't handle the pain, because these are unnatural contractions. These are not like regular labor contractions. And so then you need an epidural. So picture a domino line all the way down. You push that very first one. That very first domino is walking in the hospital in the first place. The second thing is getting an IV put in your arm. The third is you're not progressing fast enough. Let's get you on Pitocin. They become too strong. Well, here's a little secret nobody tells you. When they give you that epidural, that suppresses the baby, and then the heart rate goes down. And then, quote, you need an emergency C-section. So I've had women say, oh, I would have died if I wasn't in the hospital, because they had to do an emergency C-section. Well, actually, they caused the emergency C-section. It's called iatrogenic. It's what we as humans do to make, as care providers do, to make things worse. And that is why they have such a high C-section rate. So I want you to think about that, just walking in and then getting the IV. And then, of course, once you're on the Pitocin drip, you've got to stay in the bed. You can't walk. And I've been in a hospital bed, and those things are the most uncomfortable things in the world. So Pitocin is just a really, really bad idea. But see, they are on a time clock there. I actually had a backup OB for multiple years, and then I let him go, because our last conversation, he sat down with me and he says, Jill, honestly, I don't understand what you're doing. He says, why would women want to go through pain? He said, I can do a C-section in 22 minutes. Now let's just think about that for a minute. I was speechless. That is major abdominal surgery. They take your uterus out and put it up on the table, okay? There are lots, oh my goodness. We have the highest in any country that is an industrialized country, a first world country. We are at the bottom of the list in infant and maternal death rate ever in 2020. Why is that? It's because we fiddle. The OBs, they're only trained one way. They don't understand anything about natural birth. I had to go back in my training and read what textbooks OBs were reading. Of course they believe this way. And I feel bad for OBs. I'm not angry with them. They are trained to believe that pregnancy is a disease, just like cancer. If you have cancer, the doctors have to manage it. So they believe you are one breath away from death. And so if you understand how they were trained, of course they're going to do all these things. OBs are surgeons. That's what they do. They cut. And when I need a surgeon, I want the best. But they were never trained. They were never trained in food. Midwives and chiropractors know that food is medicine. You've got to feed yourself and the baby well, not McDonald's garbage, but good, healthy, whole foods. So doctors are not trained in that. They're not trained in the normal physiology. That's why they insist everybody lays flat on their back to deliver their baby. I had a doctor once, I was doing doula work to pay for my midwifery school, and I was dueling in the hospital, and this mama was on her hands and knees on the bed, and she was starting to push. So the doctor comes in and he looks at her and goes, "What in the world do you think you're doing?" She goes, "I'm pushing the baby out." And he said, "Well, that's utterly ridiculous. You cannot safely deliver your baby, push your baby out on hands and knees. That's not safe." That's a bunch of malarkey. Actually, what happened is he was not trained in how to catch a baby with the mom on hands
That's
and
right.
knees. So
That's right.
you have to understand how they're trained. Another thing, the cord. Oh my goodness. So statistics show it takes 25 years in America for, once science tells us something, it takes 25 years to put it into practice in the medical setting. So several years ago, multiple years ago, at least 10 years, doctors knew around the world that a cord should be left intact. Why? Because the baby's microbiome needs the stem cells. The stem cells are at the back of the placenta. So I want you to think about drinking chocolate milk that you made from a powder. So if you stir that up really good and then you drink the milk, what's left at the bottom is this thick, gooey, chocolatey. I happen to love chocolate. I don't do chocolate milk, but I know what it looks like. So all that gooiness, the best part's at the bottom. It's the same way with a mom's placenta. The stem cells are at the back. That placenta needs 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes easily before we ever consider cutting the cord. And so, but they've got to do everything quickly. That's why they pull the placenta out. That's why more women hemorrhage in the hospital than at home, because they pull it off the wall. Why? Because they're in a hurry to get the job done. Because, and here's another little dirty secret. When a woman goes in the hospital and attempts a natural birth, the hospital does not make a dime. Why? Because they need more nurses. If a woman walks into the hospital and has a C-section, that is their cash cow. They make money, and handsomely, on a C-section. So they've actually done studies, insurance companies did, to see how much money OBs make. So if an OB is in your room in prenatals for 5 minutes, they lose money. If the doctor is only in the prenatal room for 4 minutes, he breaks even. If the doctor is in the prenatal room for 3 minutes, he makes money. Sorry, can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. I can't see you.
Yes, because somebody's trying to airdrop something. Hold on just a second. I'm so sorry.
I will check the chats and see if we have anything. Shailene, do you have any questions? I think we have Shailene, and let's see. Kristen. Oh, I only have one attendee on there. There's Kristen. Kristen, do you have any questions? If you do, go ahead in the chat and send me a question. I'll see if we can't answer it. No? Okay. So my intention was not that we were going to, before we go back to explaining that, my intention was that we would record this interview and then I would be able to forward it out. So last minute, I put it up and invited people if they wanted to join us. So I think it's so vitally important what you're sharing, you know, and the whole intention, guys, is that, you know, I don't want to scare you at all
No.
about having birth, okay? But this is the reality. Walking into the hospital is giving away control to someone else. Now you're pregnant, your hormones are going, and you're going to comply with whatever they want you to do, because you're in a very vulnerable place. You're in vulnerability land, and unless you have a strong advocate, a strong husband, or just a strong advocate that will stand for you, you're not going to be able to stand for yourself unless you're an extremely strong woman. Now,
Exactly.
you know, I could bear, you know, I'm a strong person and I stand hard, and I stand for what I believe in. However, I've had 5 children, and being in that position, you're not yourself, and you're gonna, you know, you're very vulnerable. So you want to birth in a very, in my experience being birthed in the hospital and birthing at home, is that it's a very safe experience at home. You want to be in a safe place. You know, you've heard of nesting, and women go into this nesting of getting everything ready, getting things set up, getting blankets together and organizing and cleaning things out. And you get this rush of energy right before you go into labor. The woman that's in labor right now, she was mowing her lawn just a few days ago. So you just get this burst of energy, and it's great. But when you go into the hospital, you're giving away you're allowing them to do whatever they want to do to you, and drug you up, and even talk you into a C-section, which they're not really talking you into it. They're just saying, we're going to do a C-section. And you're like, okay, because you just don't, you're not yourself when you go into labor. Okay. You go into a different birthing world, going internal. So having a strong advocate if you choose to go to the hospital. But right now we're in a different climate. And you know, Jill, I don't think we're ever going to return to the freedoms that we had in the past walking into a hospital. I hate to say that, but a lot of things are going to change, and that includes going to the hospital to have babies.
So I have a client that's due any day, and her 16-year-old daughter took a nasty fall and had a severe concussion, and they would not let her in the hospital with her. So it's not just labor and delivery. I think, yes, things are going to be very different, very different. And so I talked just a second about being a doula. So doulas are a great idea if you have to birth in a hospital. Unfortunately, that's changing every day. Some days they say, nope, no doulas. If you test positive, they'll make the husband leave. So there are women who are birthing alone, and that should never happen. And this pandemic is not over. It's going to show its head again in another way down the road. And so we've got to be prepared, not just buying toilet paper so it doesn't happen next, you know, when it happens next time. But I think we need to be really wise. And if you absolutely have to birth in a hospital, educate yourself. Educate yourself. Take an excellent childbirthing class like hypnobirthing or Bradley, something that gives you resources, and then read everything you can. I think on my website there's a resource list of great books to read. But it is, you're right, Doc. It's very hard to advocate for yourself
So
when you are.
let me give them your website. Your website is chbirthservices.com. C is in cat, H is in hat, birth services with an S on it.com. And we'll try to, when I make this video better, we'll put up that contact. And can they contact you directly at this point in time?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, all my contact information, my phone number, my email, all of that. You can also go on, I think it's called Michigan Midwives Association, and there is a list of licensed CPMs as well. Because I'm much more interested in getting your patients well educated than trying to take every woman out there, because I'm one person. But my goal is to get the word out that home birth is a safe alternative. It's interesting, in the UK, you have a midwife at the very beginning. And unless that midwife risks you out, you have a midwife. You don't have an OB. Why? Because it doesn't make sense to have a surgeon come in when it's not necessary. It's been likened to hiring a brain surgeon to babysit your 4-year-old. Excuse me. Hiring a neurosurgeon to babysit your 4-year-old so you can go out to the movies is ridiculous. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is a natural birth process. You know, in other countries, that was my point earlier, is in other countries, we don't deliver at the hospitals. Midwives go to the person's home. There's birth centers. So for some reason in America, and I believe it's the medical, you know, the medical machine is to create a financial industry, and birth processes is a financial industry. So the more people, just like you gave the statistics of the 3-minute pre-delivery appointment, the 3-minute prenatal or pre-delivery, I wrote it down.
Prenatal. Yes, prenatal.
Prenatal, the 3-minute, come on. I spend 3 minutes saying hello to my patients.
Right.
Developing a relationship, you know, are we,
yes.
You know, it's about relationship with our patients, you know?
And that's what is so critical with a midwife, because if you're going to ask someone to come into your home at the most vulnerable time in your life, you want to know that person and you want to build the trust. I will say too, you may have some women will say, well, I just started my 3rd trimester, it's too late. It is not too late. I have had women at 40 weeks say, oh, I'm not doing it. I'm not walking in the hospital. And if they're a good fit and they're low risk, then we can do that. So it's never too late to do something like that. So I just want women to have a choice. They need to understand that both sides. That's when when I talk about vitamin K, or when I talk about the metabolic screening that they'll tell you in the hospital is illegal not to get, I'm going to give you both sides and you decide. Why? Because at the end of the day, you take your baby home. You're the one that has to raise that child. If you make a decision on vaccines and you're want to be firm in that, then you are taking responsibility for your child. Because a doctor, I guarantee you, a doctor won't give you a second thought a minute after he walks out of your room. He's not going to.
Right. And sometimes you'll be going in to have delivery and it won't even be your doctor that shows up. The doctor that you may have seen, you know, throughout your whole pregnancy. And then all of a sudden, oh, he's off today. And so you've got a complete stranger, you know, you're in a very vulnerable, you're naked, your private area is exposed, you know, who are you willing to expose that to? So,
And they
I have a quote. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, they don't even ask permission to do vaginal exams. You can have 4 or 5 people in there doing vaginal exams. Your cervix is not you don't need that.
Yep. They might have students and they'll just come in and without asking, they're putting their fingers in you, like one right after another. What is that? To me, that's like rape. You know, that's just not cool. And let me tell you, you think that you would be able to say, no, well, you're in labor. Your eyes are closed. You're in the process. So you're not aware of what's happening in the room. You're not aware of people walking in and out. You're just not aware. And people think, oh, I'd never let that happen. Well, you don't know, you know, if you're in contraction, even not in contraction, but in between contractions, your eyes are closed, you're breathing, you're focused on relaxing, and or maybe you weren't taught to focus on relaxing and opening up, but you're open, you're allowing that baby to come through the birth canal. And then you've got people walking in and out. When I was delivering in the hospital, I was not aware of who was in the room. I wasn't even aware that they were going to cut me.
Oh.
An episiotomy. I had no idea. I'm in active labor and they cut me without my permission.
That's medical abuse.
Yeah, that's abuse. We'll get back to abuse in a second. I have a comment from my friend Kristen here that she had a COVID conversation with someone who was about ready to have a baby. One of her clients was worried about COVID. She gave me a website info and a document to tell hospital they don't have the right to take the baby. I gave it to my client and to help, but it put her at ease with something walking into the hospital. And she says she wished she would have considered a home birth. She gave birth last week and everything was okay, COVID-wise, and at home with the baby now. Praise the Lord. She really thought she had no choice going in. So sad. Yeah, it is so sad. I've had reports where they don't allow anybody else into the hospital, so the woman has to go alone. That's the current report, is they're not even allowing the father to go into the hospital, or the mother of the birthing woman, who is their greatest advocate. Who wouldn't be their greatest advocate is their own mother.
Yeah.
Mama bear. So,
Exactly.
you know, I've heard of this, this abuse, medical abuse. I've heard testimony on medical abuse when women go in to have the babies, of all sorts of crazy stuff that it's perpetrated. And, you know, I'm not trying to make this an issue, but I've heard that it's a medical abuse during labor is higher in the African American population.
Oh my goodness.
That white doctors, I'm sorry to blow this one up, but African American women are more susceptible to abuse during labor than any other population.
They're also twice the time to die than a white woman. Same with the baby.
So you're telling me that current statistics show that in the African American community, that
twice as likely to. Yep, they are twice as likely to die in the United States. And our statistics are already terrible for the United States, but they are twice as likely to die. And when I was a doula in the hospital, I witnessed this firsthand and saw what happened to African American women. And who was a tennis star that
Serena?
Serena, she's one of the most well-known African-American women, and certainly the most highly paid, and she still suffered from racism. So it's huge. It's huge.
So going into the hospital as a minority runs twice the risk of going into the hospital as a white woman to birth your baby.
Yes. Yep. That's a sobering thought, isn't it?
There's no words. No, it should never be that way. It should never be that way. It should never be that way for any woman. And, you know, I really think, and I'm going to declare right now that because of the environment we've been, the lockdown we've been in, and the changing environment with COVID and the hospitals and the press. So we're all in a press right now. Every business, every human, especially in Michigan, we are in a significant press right now. And I believe that, no, we're not going to be going back to normal. There will not be going back to the way things were. And that because of this, a new thing must be created. That the Lord download a new thing to someone that can create an environment for birthing, especially Christian mamas, okay? Especially my sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
A new thing. So we must rise up as a female group, okay? All brothers and sisters, no, well, okay, husbands. But brothers and sisters in Christ must rise up and demand a different thing. Okay, we do not deserve, no matter what color, no matter what race, we must have a safe environment to birth. Okay, that's number one. I don't think we'll ever get that in the current environment. So we must have a new platform of birthing at home, a birthing society, a home birth society that is different. We are called to be holy and set apart. Our bodies are a holy temple. We're living sacrifices. Okay, we're to be in the world, but not of the world. Okay, use God's wisdom, not man's wisdom. Where man's wisdom is not man's wisdom. It's the lie of man. And if we continue to birth the way we've been birthing in the United States, we're going to continue to get the same death rate of women and children and the same medical abuse during the birth process. And now they have a license. They had a license before. Now there's nothing holding them back during the birth process in the hospital. Okay, so tell me your solution, Jill. What's the solution?
Boy,
what's your vision?
We need bigger platforms to tell the truth. MANA, Midwives of North America, have a research arm, and it's just doctors of research, and they look at the safety of home birth, and they put out a report. So before MANA, there was one study that came out, and it showed birth was not safe at home, but they clumped everybody together. Everybody who had never had a prenatal appointment, everybody that accidentally birthed at home, everyone that didn't have a licensed trained midwife. They lumped everybody together. Well, that's not practical, and it doesn't excuse the reason. So the last report was of 10,000 births, and it is safe for low-risk women. So if we can get the word out, I wish I knew somebody from a news organization to get the word out more. I know a couple years ago, one of the local magazines put me in their magazine, and I talked about the safety of home birth. But we need a bigger bully pulpit, and I don't know how to do it. That's why I jump at any chance when somebody contacts me and wants to do something like this. It's like, yes, let's get the word out, but we need a bigger platform, and I'm not sure how to do it yet.
Okay. Well,
Because there are
let's,
very
yes,
Christian
I ask for the Lord to download to the person he has chosen to keep his women safe and his baby safe, that we get a new platform. It might not be us. I have enough on my plate as it is, but we need a new platform. So I'm praying that the Lord will release into someone, download into someone, and create it, make it a national thing, Lord, like birthing centers, but a national, safe Christian birthing plan that will honor the Lord and honor the babies coming in, and that no baby will be harmed, no mother will be harmed during the birth process, that the mothers will be honored. Or, rise up Christian doulas more, and certified midwives, raise them up, Lord. We're going to have a new thing. I believe that. I believe it. I believe it. So we've got a few minutes left. We've got just a few minutes left. And Jill, let's just say that somebody wants to connect with a midwife, that want to consider having a home birth. They've been going the medical route, and now they want to change their process. What would be the first step that they would do?
Either go to the website of Michigan Midwives Association and read about that, different midwives in the area. I do want to warn Christian women that not all midwives are created equal. We have a very large contingent of New Age goddesses, witches that are midwives. So you need to ask the Lord for wisdom. I think the next thing is to read excellent books. On my website, there's a whole list of books, but just start reading about home birth. And Dr. Sarah Buckley, she's an excellent author. She is an OB that lives in Australia. And when she had her first baby, she went, oh my goodness, why would I do this at a hospital? And so she is a home birth advocate. She travels the country and speaks at midwifery conferences. So she's got a couple of books. Ina Mae Gaskin is another. She is the creator of what's called The Farm, and she has written multiple books about home birth and just birthing naturally. So I would just go to different midwives' websites. I know on mine, I've got a whole slew of videos, blog posts. My blog posts are very intentional to teach women on different topics. There's probably 20 or so topics. I have Midwifery Tip of the Day. You can find them on YouTube under Compassionate Hands. You can find them on Compassionate Hands Facebook page. I just want women to have information. So that's what I would do. Start downloading books and start reading everything you can. And you're going to see that you can be empowered, that this is your birth and you get to decide how your birth is going to go. And I just think that's critical.
Yes, it is. It is critical, because you only have a baby. You only have this baby once, and God created us to have babies. It's a natural process. Yes, it's not comfortable. It's not. But guess what? It's going to be over shortly. It will be over shortly, and you will completely forget about the labor you just went through. And guess what? You'll have another baby. Some of us have 5 or more.
I had 7.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, I have friends, my 2 great, best friends, each have 7. Now I have another one, Jill, has had 7. So, well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day and to give us some words of wisdom. And I'm going to forward this to my patients. Anybody watching this, I want you to know how vital and beautiful chiropractic partners with the birth as you're going through growing with baby. It's vitally important to have your pelvis aligned. If your pelvis is not aligned, then that torques the exit of the baby. So usually in the last 3 months, I like to see people on a weekly basis. I mean, I know that might seem excessive, but I can tell you, you're welcome, Kristen. I have a little message from Kristen that says, thank you. Thank you, Kristen, for being with us today. But it's so vitally important to have your pelvis aligned. The one that was in labor, she came in, she's probably having the baby right now. But yesterday, she started her labor in the morning, bloody show, contraction. So, it could be anywhere, 2 days to 4 days in this situation. But as I'm checking her pelvis, and aligning, I can so appreciate the way God made the body in the sacrum and the sacral segments and how that's loosening up as the baby. I just can vision.
Uh-oh, somehow you froze. I don't know if you can still hear me or not.
What else? You'll feel better. You'll feel better.
So just as an ending note, I ask all my women to get chiropractic care because I liken it to a real estate agent. A real estate agent will tell you when you buy a home, it's all about location, location, location. When you birth a baby, it's all about position, position, position. So chiropractic care is a huge part of my practice. It's in my client book. I want all women to be manipulated and that pelvis to be able to move. So it's a wonderful midwifery and chiropractic
We
care.
call it adjustment.
Adjustment. So it's
yes, go hand in hand. Yeah, nobody likes to be manipulated. People like to be adjusted. Manipulation has that, my husband, no, I shouldn't even say that, but my children like to manipulate me.
Yes. But I'm going to have to go because I've got clients coming.
It's okay.
But
yes,
you and I, we need to get together.
Yes. I'm going to turn off the recording. God bless you guys. Okay.